It's a bit much, right? Like I should probably. I'm gonna take it off. It's too much. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Shinobi Nando, and today I'm reviewing Ghostwire Tokyo, the new game from Bethesda Studios. I want to start off this video by actually saying a big thank you to Bethesda UK for providing me a review code for the PS5. And just to give you a heads up, this will be a spoiler-free review. Well, to the best of my ability, obviously I will need to talk about a few things, but for the most part, I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. When I first saw Ghostwire Tokyo and some actual gameplay of it at E3, I thought this game looked right up my alley, especially as a huge anime fan. With all the hand signs and weaving and stuff like that, I thought this is basically a photorealistic anime game. Well, obviously it's not an anime game, it's an original story. Speaking of the story, that's where things start to fall apart. Ghostwire Tokyo is the story of Akito and KK. KK is sort of a paranormal detective, and while never really explained, he just somehow has powers. But at the very beginning of the game, he's dead and he's searching for a body to inhabit it, and he stumbles upon Akito. Now, Akito has been in a car accident, I think the game's not very clear, or a motorcycle accident or something, in Shibuya, and using his powers, KK inhabits his body, brings him back to life, in order to use him as a vessel to fight the Hanya Mask Man. Yes, if it sounds vague, it's because Ghostwire Tokyo's story is incredibly vague. A lot of things are cliche in this as well. Akito is your typical bad brother or Oni-chan, and KK is your reluctant mentor that barely gives any information. For no reason whatsoever. He's just cryptic for the sake of being cryptic. And you're basically just kind of along for the ride. And this is a problem that carries out throughout the entire story. There are loads of moments that shouldn't be significant, but are seemingly lost without context. When things happen, especially huge moments, you have no connection to what's going on because characters just kind of dip in and out and appear and we're supposed to know who they are. Suffice it to say, I haven't been overly impressed by the main plot of Ghostwire Tokyo. It's supposed to be this story about grief and loss and letting go and moving on, but honestly, I didn't even realize that until the very end of this game. And I mean literally the very end of this game, like the final cutscene, you kind of put this together finally. Don't get me wrong, you can find out more of the story in game, but it's usually wrapped around side missions or collectibles that you have to then listen to in the main menu or just read up on. And even then, it's still all a bit vague. The best part for me was actually the side missions, which were their own self-contained little missions and stories. A lot of them are modern takes on classic Japanese folktales. They mainly revolve around helping lost spirits. It was really interesting seeing the studio take the vast legends and Japanese folktales about yokai and give them a modern twist. It's what kept me engaged and interested for my 30-hour stint through the game. Now, your mileage might vary if you're not really into folktales in general, and especially Japanese culture, but they are definitely the highlight of this game. In fact, a lot of the character development has little to no context in the main story unless you do their side missions. What little backstory we get is through these moments, these little self-contained quests. To the point where some of the late game revelations don't even make any sense without them. Even outside the yokai, it explores a lot of Japanese culture, including modern phenomena such as the hikimoris, or shut-ins and hoarders. I've heard people call this a first-person horror game, and while it can be unsettling and maybe a little unnerving at times at best, this is definitely more of an action game. There are very few or brief moments of uneasiness, and the very rare jump scare. If anything, it's more akin to anime, like something like Bleach or Jujutsu Kaisen, which you wouldn't call a horror. If you're an anime fan, you're going to see a lot of parallels between shows like Bleach or Jujutsu Kaisen and even Naruto. You spirit weave the elements, firing out gusts of wind, blades of water, and explosive fiery attacks. You can either rapid fire these anime attacks or launch a charged attack, especially something like the element of fire where it'll have a massive explosion and a larger area of damage and effect. And that's pretty much your mainstay for combat. Everything is ranged, although they do say the water is melee. This game is sadly lacking a melee feature. Now you do have some weapons such as a spirit bow or kunai if you get the pre-order ninja costume. And you can also use things like talismans to trick enemies, stun them, expose their cores so you can destroy the spirits faster. But other than that, combat isn't really varied. On top of lacking a melee function, there's no dodge. You can block, and if you block at the correct moment, you will parry attacks, taking no damage and knocking back the visitors. Well, some of them. The fact that so many of the visitors come into melee range and attack you really makes you miss having a melee function or a dodge. Now, I know some of you might think this idea might be a little on the nose for a Japanese game, but seeing as we have a spirit bow, I don't understand why we didn't have something like a martial arts skill or maybe even a katana or something like that. I found the combat very clunky and disappointing, to be honest. Now, the rest of the gameplay, for the most part, I found fun. You go around Tokyo gathering up the various people that have been transformed into spirits, which also nets you your XP. Combat only really takes off at a really high level when you're finally able to do meaningful damage to multiple enemies, as at the beginning of the game, you are really weak. About mid-game, you have access to all three elements, as well as talismans, and most importantly, the prayer beads, which absolutely boost your damage so much. In fact, I highly recommend that you seek these out because each level seemed to increase it by like 30%. Now this game does have a few cool boss battles, but they're at odds again with the very clunky control system. You are constantly fighting the controls. The gameplay outside of combat involves cleansing malicious spirits, solving puzzles and helping lost spirits or yokai, which actually was the most fun for me. From the tanuki hunts to playing hide and go seek with the kappa, or even solving the mystery of a hikimori house or hoarder who has been trapping spirits because of his hoarding nature has cursed the area. These were great and never felt like a fetch quest or a grind to do. Well, except for the ones that ended up with you being trapped in a room with a horde of visitors to fend off. Oh, before I forget, stealth is this thing. It's somewhat useful in initial encounters with visitors, and once upgraded, I could clear some smaller encounters without ever being seen. But for the most part, to be honest, you're going to be in open world combat. Unfortunately, like most other games that have a seemingly simple stealth mechanic that might seem OP at times, there are 4 stealth sections. Even worse, a lot of these come at a time when you are removed from KK and lose access to your powers, as he is the source of them. There are even some enemies that will grab you and rip KK's soul out of your body, meaning that you lose all your powers mid-fight. One thing I will say in this game's favor, however, is at least you do have access to some abilities. You'll still have access to the bow and your talismans, and even do stealth takedowns while you're separated from KK. On top of combat and puzzle solving, there's actually a parkour system in this game, or at least it tries to be. And while, yes, there is a cool spirit gliding mechanic, and you can even grapple to the various Tengu spread throughout Shibuya, just like the combat, you're going to be really fighting these clunky controls. I can't put into words how frustrating the parkour system is in this game. It is bad. And even worse, there are parts of the game, and even the main story, that include jumping puzzles. Speaking of clunky controls, there's another part of this game which I hate to mention because it diminishes the previous point I made, how the puzzle solving and yokai side missions were some of my favorite. You have to often dispel cursed spirits using the controller to weave signs or make symbols with your hands and, all that good stuff. However, it tries to get you to use either the analog stick or the touchpad on the PS4 controller, and they just don't work. In fact, what boggles my mind is the developers included an option where you just simply hold down the square button and KK does it for you, and there's no penalty to any collectibles or anything else in the game. I don't even know why the spirit weaving to break seals or lift curse on spirits even exist if you're going to do that? It's clearly the developers knew that it was a clunky system that didn't work. Why else would you have included a button so you didn't have to do it at all? I'm glad they did, but yeah, I don't get the logic. Now, while the story and the combat left a lot to be desired, one thing that saves this game is the visuals. This game is gorgeous and chock full of detail. Things like exploring the photorealistic Shibuya covered in an ethereal fog with the clothes of the people that have been transformed into spirits just dropped on the ground wherever they were, to the incredible attention to detail where you could do things like go into the now empty konbinis run by the yokai, and the level of detail on the shelves and the items in the open world are phenomenal. Especially when you go into one of the houses related to the yokai or the side missions, and the level of detail in there is insane. This game is like a virtual tour of Tokyo. And look, while I stand by my point that this, by no stretch of the imagination, is a horror game, if someone was judging this game based purely off the visuals, they could be forgiven for that assumption. As mentioned before, due to the fact that the visitors are based on curses and also Japanese folklore and the paranormal themes around that and Shintoism, they are disturbing and creepy looking. And there's even sections where the spirit world and the real world start to merge and things start to shift and warp. Or yokai are actually disguising and warping the environment in order to make it more suitable for them. This brings me back to the side missions and how weirdly some of the best locations in the game are linked to the side missions, such as an inverted Shibuya, old samurai manor, an otherworldly train station, or by one of the many cursed locations or haunted houses in the game. But even the more mundane locations were really cool to look at. Things like Tokyo's underground subway system, or even things like the shopping centers or the torii gates and the shrines and the festivals that surrounded them. Even the character designs look really great, especially as, like Japan where it's set, it takes the blending of the modern and the old and puts it together seamlessly. Our antagonists are clad in techwear fashion while wearing hanya masks, giving us the appearance of like modern day ninja. You can even customize Akito, giving him different outfits based on what you unlock from either helping some of the Neko yokai or unlocking them through the various side missions. Speaking of the characters, this game has absolutely fantastic voice acting. Okay, while I wasn't a fan of the story as a whole, and the characters are really cliched and one-dimensional, it really helps that the voice acting was phenomenal. This is because they use some of the best voice actors in anime. In the role of KK, we have none other than Kazuhiko Inoue, a voice that sub-watchers everywhere of Naruto should recognize instantly as Kakashi Sensei. You have Kensuke Nishi from shows like Death Note and Blue Exorcist playing the role of Akito. Even better, Kazuhiko plays the role of his English counterpart in the English dub. Yes, this game has multiple languages for the voice acting. However, I would personally suggest that you play it in the original Japanese with subtitles. I did listen to a bit of the English dub while I was free roaming, but I can't give a full opinion on how good it is for the rest of the story. Not that, again, the story was great, nor do I want to start a debate of sub over dub. However, for a game like this, where it is so tied to Japanese culture, Japanese folklore, and Japanese religion, I had to listen to it and play it in Japanese. Anyone who speaks multiple languages knows that certain things just don't have context or get lost in translation, and even your personality changes when you speak another language. So for me, if you don't like listening to things in 4 languages with subtitles, I say for the purpose of immersion, try to at least play this game with English subtitles and the Japanese voice acting. So, time for my final thoughts and my rating. I want to make it clear that I did enjoy this game. I had a lot of fun in the open world outside of the story missions. And no, I don't just mean the side missions which I brought up like 10 times in this review. I actually mean just exploring Shibuya was phenomenal. A large part due, and again, to the visuals. I love Japan, I love the legends, I love the folklore, I love yokai. I knew about them before I went into this game. And of course, I'm a huge anime fan. So If you're not, your mileage may vary. I will say if you went into this game thinking it was a horror game and that's why you picked it up instead of your kind of fascination or obsession with Japan, then you are going to be really disappointed and your score, your own personal score might be lower. Tokyo Ghostwire gets a final score of silver. I'm going to have to give it a silver shuriken, which for me on my rating system means pick it up on sale. All I'm saying is if you see it for like 35, 30 pounds, pick it up if you're interested. I would not pay full price for this, even with the amount of fun I had. And I did have a lot of fun. I nearly platinumed this game. I just can't score it any higher. What with its clumsy combat, its abysmal parkour system, and its flat, boring, and cliched story. This game's playtime varies depending on what you want to get out of it. If you just want to do the story and do some of the exploration of Shibuya, then you probably get about 9 to 12 hours out of this. If you're like me and you did every side mission and you tried to do all the collectibles, then you will get about 25 to 30 hours. And most importantly, at the end of the day, despite all its flaws, I actually had fun with Ghostwire Tokyo. I did like it. It's never going to be my game of the year, and I can never recommend it at full price. But there you go, I had fun. Speaking of not picking up the game full price, if you'd like to pick up the game after my review and you want to save some money, check out the link in the description. That is an affiliate link, but you will get a nice discount on the game. I will make a small commission, so that way you can help me support the channel and get more of the plastic stuff behind me to unbox. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed the review. If you found it helpful, let me know if I helped you make a decision. Let me know in the comments if you've played it, what you thought about it. Did you enjoy the story? Did I miss something maybe? And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more unboxings, more reviews, and more what's in the box, where I break down what you can get where, how much it's going to cost you, and who has it for the cheapest. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.